नमस्कार, जय हिंद, जय भारत and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. मेरे साथ हैं I have with me है Mshl Diptendu Choudhary sir. पहले तो सर नमस्कार, welcome to the show once again.
Namaskar, Adi. Pleasure to be back with you once again.
आज हम बात करेंगे we will basically take up the Iran war but not in the political sense of it. I want to talk about the Air Force and I want to talk about air power. I want to talk about किस तरह से the Israelis did what they did, the Americans did what they did and how Iranians did what they did. And what can we learn from it? That's the most important thing. Because at the end of it, yeah, we can get into the politics, which we always do about on the channel. But pure air power perspective, what is it that we can learn? You know, the sustained air campaigns, the capabilities of doing ambush attacks by the Iranians, the capabilities of hitting an F-35, the capabilities of targeting through missiles, drones, and stuff like that. What can we learn from this? Because a lot of it is getting implemented in India as well as we speak, but a lot more needs to be done. So, sir, openings up, when you look at just the pure air campaign, sustenance of operations, 15,000 raids in, 16,000 raids by the Americans itself in a matter of 30 days or 40 days or whatever it is a huge, this thing. I mean, you can talk about the impact and this and that, but the sustained air campaign with the refuelers, with this, with that, it's quite amazing to actually see.
Adi, I'm so glad, you brought it out in this manner because, what is happening of late, and especially after the Russo-Ukraine war and the subsequent conflicts where the use of missiles and drones have sort of taken center stage. And the role air power plays has been sort of slipped into the background. Like you mentioned, 15,000 plus sorties, and this is just the US itself. The Israelis have carried out as many and on two entirely separate fronts as well. It's carrying out air operations over Lebanon as well. So there are, two important facts which I think people tend to forget is that the geographic position of Iran, fact that it doesn't have any common borders with either Israel and the fact that its distance from the US has necessitated air power to be the lead instrument of force. It's but natural because that's the only way you can, hit and hurt the Iranians, and that's what the plan was. So I think, what has got lost out is the sheer amount of pounding which the US and the Israelis have carried out on the Iranian infrastructure, their military, their military establishments, its nuclear infrastructure. They have and the most stunning of all has been the eliminating the leadership. But the challenge is that all this is not just happened just by missiles and drones. It's happened due to a fabulously orchestrated air campaign. There is no denying the fact at the kind of multi-domain, enormously, what should I say, synchronized and orchestrated use of air power, right from support elements to the kinetic elements, and carried out over such long distances. So that is something we tend to forget. So this, I would say, I think probably, I mean, to my knowledge, the kind of effects air power has produced with its precision and accuracy and the kind of damage it has done is probably unprecedented like this in anywhere in the world in the past in terms of sheer volume of air power and the outcomes, military outcomes it has produced.
When you look at the situation itself in these things, air defense was one of their first targets, and they took out, the seed operations were done, and whatever said and done, they removed the networked air defense or whatever existed in Iran. But Iran was still able to do ambush attacks, and I particularly am very impressed with the F-15 ambush attack. They, as per what the story is, and this is coming out from Western sources, that they hide these tactical systems, radar guided missiles or whatever it is in these mountains, and they just sit and wait and draw patterns of where the attacks are coming from, and they suddenly come out, shoot at one or two and just go back inside, get destroyed or whatever it is, but give a very tactical sort of a defeat to a very dominant air power in that particular region. That's very impressive. I mean, it may lose that system, those people, it's gone, because the counter raids will be there, right there, because they will realize where it has come from. So they will go and pound that place into smithereens. That all is there. But there's the tactics that were used in this particular thing is absolutely impressive.
That's a very interesting perspective, Adi. I want to highlight two aspects here. One is that when air operations are carried out, and this has come back in this war again, is that you need to ascertain a degree of control of air over adversarial airspaces. That means if you want your air power to operate reasonably freely, if not totally freely, you need to dominate the adversarial spaces and keep your air force, your offensive arm, as safe as possible from adversarial air defense. In Russia and Ukraine, Russia, despite its enormously larger air power, more capable platforms and weapon systems, was doctrinally and conceptually restrained, because that is not how the Russians use air power, and they paid the price for it. So despite the initial success against, when the initial opening days of the war, the Ukrainian Air Force pretty much went out of business very quickly. It didn't really stand a chance. But what happened was, because the Russians don't use air power effectively, or did not use air power effectively in the normal sense, in the Western sense, or the way we do, wherein any lead operation by air power would most certainly have been preceded by, like you mentioned, SEAT, taking out the enemy air defense. They did not do that. So they gave the Ukrainian air defense, which comes under their air force, a chance to survive. And now with subsequent NATO help and imagery and situational awareness from the West, it was able to employ its air defense in a much more tactical manner, where they would keep moving the assets around and be able to ambush the Russians, to a point where the Russians found it unsafe to fly over Ukrainian territory. Be that it may, that means the Russian Air Forces can't fly over the territory, but it hasn't stopped Russian Air Force carrying out standoff attacks and the Russian military carrying out long-range strikes with its missiles and drones. Drones have come out as a counter, as a desperation from the Ukrainian side, because of the inability of Ukraine to hurt the Russians over their territory. So that is I think the essential challenge. And so this is a distinct shift from what is happening in West Asia or the Gulf. Out here, if you look at it, Ukraine, unlike Ukraine, which had an air force, the Iran also had an air force, but Iranian air force, over almost half a century of restrictions, of sanctions, it stagnated. Its platforms were ironically US-based platforms, F-14s of the past. But its air force stagnated simply because of the sanctions of the last, because of the regime. They could not build and sustain their air force over a period of time. So they took a deliberate choice long back to rely on air defense by building a potent air defense structure, and create an offensive capability which is built on missiles and drones in such a manner that it would serve as a deterrent for the countries in the region. But if you look at it from a larger perspective, this strategy did not really work. The deterrence bit failed, because the US and the Israelis have hit them. They hit them last year, and they've hit them this year again, and they're continuing to do so. So what did the US do? It typically, like US and the Israelis, they took out the air defense, and this air defense was taken out, unlike most operations, not just by sheer air power alone, by an enormously well-planned, long planned and intricate operation, which was a mix of intelligence, ground operations, insurgent teams, espionage, electronic warfare, multi-domain operations, and hard power kinetic air power. So all this came together to take out the Iranian air defense. Now look at it, that initial days that they managed to take out majority of the heavy duty air defense. But it is also, you look, like you mentioned yourself, look at Iran's size and terrain. It is almost impossible for any nation to take out another country's air defense. Impossible. As much as it is impossible to protect a country totally by air defense. You look at Israel with the best of equipment, Iron Dome, and the David Sling, and the three-tiered system that it has not been able to totally prevent Ukrainian and attacks by its proxies, and by I beg your pardon, not Ukrainian, Iran and its proxies. Okay, so there is a limitation here. So air defense is impossible to take out in its entirety. But what does the air operations tell us? That while initial air operations may have been standoff to take out those critical aspects, subsequent operations have been stand-in. There's a fair amount of operations which have carried out at not entirely at long-range standoff distances. So this is something we have to understand in our mind, because of late I've been hearing a lot of talk amongst the in our strategic circuit and military community that it's an era of only long range and standoff precision wars. That's fine for the West. It does not match our reality, where territorial disputes and unresolved borders remain a major continental threat for India. So can we just win or resolve our border situations with long-range warfare? Most certainly not, because our troops are face to face. So this is a reality our military has to come to terms with. I'm afraid a lot of our military, and especially a lot of the strategic community, who are not so well versed in the nuances of air power, are unfortunately drawing the wrong lessons from these wars. Air power never claimed that it could win a war by its own. There were some thoughts in this by the Americans post Gulf War, over enthusiasm, but the Indian Air Force has been most very clear on this. But typically our military leadership, and especially from the other services, tend to look at wars outside and bring them to the Indian context, which is a dangerous thing to do. So I would argue the reason why Ukraine's air defense little and the few losses they are creating are out of innovative tactics, and innovative tactics will always prevail in long-term wars. We have seen this in spades over in the Ukraine war. Look at the way how Ukraine adapted constantly against the Russians. So innovation of tactics out of desperation is nothing new, and they will always prove effective. You will always be able to get probably a high-end fighter as well. A stealth fighter is not an impossible platform to shoot down. It's just another platform. So losses will be there, and these are combat losses. Air forces cater for these losses. So the point I'm trying to make, while Ukraine has shown some success against especially US platforms, mind you, they have not been able to do so with the Israelis, because the Israelis operate in a little different manner. So the Israelis know their adversaries very well. They have studied these threats in a manner, and they tailor, bespoke their tactical operations to suit the adversary. But the larger point which I would like to make is that those few losses, while spectacular, maybe high-end platforms, typically aircraft losses draw a lot of attention, but it doesn't really affect the war as much. What is the war effect causing Iran is what we have to see in the longer terms. Its military is almost gone. Its industry is almost gone. Those are losses which are really long term, and the loss of a few aircraft really doesn't matter. So this is one perspective. One quick bit I'll leave here is, very interestingly, look at the amount of losses of platforms on ground. We in Indian Air Force had lost a lot of platforms in the 65 war. We learned our lessons. After that, we had put all our assets under blast bands and dispersed them. In 71 war, we lost practically, I think, one odd aircraft on ground. But look at the US. the number of platforms it has lost. It has not learned anything from the Russo-Ukraine war, where Russians have lost platforms. So this is a kind of hubris and I think poor military insight that they have not catered for the fact that there will be missiles coming into their bases and areas of operation. So I'll put it this way that, it's while these are factors, they are not defining factors for the end outcome of a total war, of a larger war.
The interesting point is that, the unbeatability of stealth. So when India considers the Su-35, oh, there's not stealth, it's useless, it's got rivets hanging out, and all that, that whole pro-American shill will start off, oh, we must buy the F-35. Stealth is just radar. People have forgotten that. It's just radar. I mean, that's 10% of the spectrum. The spectrum is that big. I mean, L-band and all that stuff, which can detect radar. IR can detect radar. And apparently the video that we saw is IR. It was glowing like a freaking, torchlight in the middle of the night.
Absolutely. Anything. I mean, a jet engine produces a lot of heat. How much ever you disperse it, there will be heat. But very interestingly, you mentioned this, Adi. We've had some very senior strategic thinkers in India who have come out on the medium and who have said that, future warfare is only stealth. I mean, that is absolutely, I will say, an extreme end without proper understanding of it. Stealth comes at a cost. Stealth is not all pervasive. It assists in penetration, in carrying out operations over adversarial spaces without minimizing your detection costs. But it does not totally remove the possibility of detection. No, it does not. Okay. Second thing is, the danger which I'm saying is that there's a presumption growing that long-range missiles, drones, and stealth are the only things of the future. That means that we will not have to go into enemy territory to carry out airstrikes or anything like that. I'm sorry, that is such a poor understanding of air power in a larger perspective, because what manned platforms even today brings to the table is mass, reusable mass. Air forces cater for losses. Their inventories cater for losses. They are willing to put their platforms at risk to ensure this kinetic mass goes across and hits the enemy again and again and again. But the challenge is, yes, increasingly it will lead to losses because of the adversarial environment, air threat environment. But that is what the whole game is about. When you take out an adversary's AD, at some point you will create space for your stand-in. You can't have standoff war fighting all along. You have to go and stand in. That means you have to go in and hit. And especially for India against our adversaries, there is no other choice in future conflict to do that. Indian Air Force is very clear on it. And I think it's a incorrect presumption by a lot of veterans to think, oh, the future wars is only going to be like this. I think that's a very incorrect lesson to draw from the Western conflicts which we are seeing of late.
The deal is where we, somebody the other day started saying, oh, we don't need fighter aircraft, we just need more drones and rockets. This debate, sir, and I remind me if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong. This debate happened in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when the manned bomber versus the rocket, between the Soviet Union and the Americans, that this whole debate started up. Everybody said, yeah, why do we need these big bombers? We can just fire a rocket. Then they realized, oh shit, if I fire a rocket, I can't call it back. The bomber I can call back, like, bhai, वापस आना नहीं. So there's each segment of this air power has its own use and sub-use and utilization, as well as redundancy. My question to you is, why are people forgetting the redundancy?
I think two things, Adi. People don't read enough on past wars and lessons. And the other factor is jumping into, technology is very selective. Moment people see new tech, and we typically, especially militaries, modern day generations, they're all fascinated by tech. So moment some new tech comes, we think, boy, this is the be all end all. We just need this. So there has been, like you said very rightly, very simplistic presumptions that future you don't need manned platforms, you just need drones and missiles. But there are a lot of arguments against it. This is not new, and you very rightly said it was not only in the 60s, it was in fact actually during World War II when the large scale amount of, what should I say, long range fires began with the German V1 and V2 uh, missile rockets, which were fired into England. And the long range artillery and long range rockets of this, typically the Katyusha rockets, which the USSR used to great effect against the Germans. So there was this presumption. So typically you found the Russian Air Force, because of its the circumstances, over a period of time relied more on missiles than bombers. You realize the Russians' bomber fleet was much smaller compared to the US bomber fleet because its role of air power was totally tied to the tactical air force. So it relied on air defense on something called the PVO Strani. But ironically, every nation which has relied on this, which had independent, very extensive air defense centric setups, have all failed. Right from the Egyptians, right? You take it down to even in the present Iraq context, or you take it down in the Ukraine context. A air defense can keep your country safe, but it will not help you defeat an adversary. To defeat an adversary, you have to go and hit him, hit the adversary's assets, infrastructure, counter force, counter value target systems. Only then can you hurt an adversary enough to be able to impose your will or a concept of defeat. So the point I'm trying to make is drones coming in are not new. The life or the lifespan of a manned platform has been written off from the longest time, for a very long time. Even Elon Musk has tried it off late when he said that the people who are making the F-35, they're a fool. The future is only unmanned warfare. But for a country our size, and you'll have to understand, unmanned warfare, high-tech warfare comes at an enormous cost. Can you create infrastructure and weapon holdings to such an effect today that we can actually resolve our issues with China and Pakistan just by drones and missiles? I leave it. I don't want to answer this question because I think the answer is evident. So where I will argue is, yes, air power has expanded. Missiles and drones most certainly have expanded the role of the vertical domain and its employment. Tomorrow's warfare will have increasingly as much use of drones and missiles as much as manned platforms. To me, the future of air forces and air power will be a balance of mix of both in the foreseeable future, to my mind. Because every country, if you notice, is expending a huge amount of money on sixth and sixth generation platforms. There must be a very good reason. Otherwise, they would have all gone into drone and missile production. So there are lots more to it than easily seen.
It's not a. I mean, the weird part is people are. I'm not sure, sir, that it's not just a single domain that can win you anything. It's not possible. You need to have a multi-domain effort. It needs to be air power dominance as well. You need to dominate someone's air. This thing. Now, okay, we'll fire only rockets. Okay, let's say there's a raid which is forming up. How do you need to have eyes on the ground. That can happen with air power. You can have the ground interdiction which needs to be done. So many 50 different things, and you're a better expert than anybody else, sir. I mean, with all your years in the Air Force, you'll be able to tell us more about it. So it's a little fantastical when we hear these end-all, where-all statements, so which is a little weird, sir. Lastly, I want to also ask you, sir, the revolution in drone warfare, right? And India is now. Yesterday, there's a discussion about getting a the LSRs going, the long range surveillance and reconnaissance systems with the Y band, and of course the GN nodules, and uh, much more stronger this thing, which will obviously help us in detecting drones, having it on a mobile platform, uh, and completely indigenous. So there's some stuff which is happening in that aspect. Some displays have happened. People have now tested the Sheshnag 150, which is a true copy of the our version of the Shahid or the Jaran or whatever we may want to call it. The revolution in this particular aspect, and these are dumb drones, these are guided drones, these are this thing. How do you see this going forward? And one, towards the offensive, and second, towards the defensive of, as far as these things are concerned, because the greatest of great systems like the Americans and all that got defeated by these particular drones until they brought in their good old you know uh, guns. They brought their basic air defense guns, and then they started shooting them down. Yeah, those guns are a little more fantastical, $40 million a piece, mounted on a this and that and the other. Ours are old, you know, zoos and shilkas and all sorts of stuff. But the purpose is the same. So with the warfare dumbing down, if I may use that term, and pardon me for that, by dumbing down I mean that it's no longer the most expensive thing that wins. It's the most effective thing that wins. So
Absolutely.
with the warfare kind of dumbing down in that particular aspect, do you think more legacy systems will actually help us in going forward? I also hear India talking about a anti-drone system, which is an artillery round, which goes up, creates a barrage of these little pellets around, so that if there's a swarm coming in, flies into it, half of them just fall down. So these are old systems, like the flak that used to be there, the good old Second World War flaks and stuff like that. So do we need to look at legacy systems as well for solutions of modern challenges in warfare?
Okay, Adi, I'll answer this question in about sort of in 3-4 bits because there are several things which come into it. First thing is on the issue which we talked about, let's say hitting the adversary, with drones and missiles. And it's also brought in the whole fact there are some people, this whole concept of air superiority is no longer relevant. I mean, I'm amazed that they are saying this. And there are some supposedly leading thinkers, strategic thinkers of the country. I begin to worry because when people make such absolute statements, because the fact of it is, whatever was been done, let's say over Iran, was simply because of the fact that there was no Iranian Air Force and the US and Israel dominated the airspace over Iran. Now, when I say dominated or there is air superiority, we have to understand that people look at terms and jump to conclusions. There are different nuances: air superiority, air supremacy, favorable air situation. What are these? These are degrees of control of air, which I remember long back when we had a chat in your show itself when we described about air defense, that there are different degrees of control of air. But the fact is you need control of air. The better control of air you have over the adversary, one domain is yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is one important aspect. Second thing comes on drones. I mean, I understand that today there is a huge sort of, I will say, industrial revolution of sorts when it comes to drones, simply because it gives a fantastic, it's a great, fantastic business opportunity for the military industrial complex. And you'll appreciate a lot of recent expenditures in the world over are actually driven by what should I say, military industrial goals rather than purely war fighting goals. So drones have come up in a big way. They are important. As of now, the capabilities of drones are still limited, because if you're looking at drones to replace manned fighters to carry out the roles, the vast amount of roles manned platforms carry out, you will need to put in a hell of a lot of technology into those drones, which make them expensive. And we have seen that the survivability of drones over adversarial airspace in depth are a challenge.
Very
Okay.
little.
So let's not forget one thing. Like the army also says, we air forces or militaries in the world over, if you want to defeat an adversary, you have to fight your way in to defeat an adversary. You have to fight your way in, fight your way out, possibly. So the point here is that you can't do that entirely with just missiles and drones. So that's the first thing I would like to put across. Drones cover a certain amount of threat perspective, and a fighter aircraft, the kind of platforms or weapons it can deliver, drones are way more limited with that. So the whole issues of ranges, survivability, all those factors come in, and these become an issue when we have a threat scenario like ours. We have long borders, we have adversaries with enormous strategic depth. Our war fighting, their adversarial assets will be in depth. So to target all that, can we do it only by drones and missiles? No, we can't. So our problem has been I would think, is that there is a danger in aping or copying the military. Just adversary, especially. Just because your adversary has something doesn't mean, fine, you may have the need, but to think that itself, just getting that is a solution, I think we are grossly underestimating our production capabilities. A rocket force takes years and years to build. It comes at an enormous cost. And the question is, the most important thing which comes in, who is now going to do the depth warfare? Earlier, it was the role of the Air Force to carry out strategic warfighting, depth targeting. Having seen the effects created in, especially in Operation Sindoor, today the Army and Navy are understandably aspirational to get these long-range vectors under them. But is that their role? I mean, one is war fighting on the borders, not losing an inch of territory. That's serious business. And the kind of adversaries we have, I don't think our war fighting on the borders will be one light skirmish and that will decide the conflict outcome. So the point I'm trying to make is that you have to differentiate between the services as to who does what. It's fine for others wanting to do this. Fine, because I want firepower. You want like you mentioned, this system which is coming 1,000 kilometers. What is the military target which you will hit 1,000 kilometers? I mean, how many can you produce of these? 1,000, 10,000? Do you envision firing 10,000 of these across in the mountains of or in the Tibetan plateau? So we have to be realistic in our approach. The important thing is here between the services to understand each other's strengths, build on your core competences, use the leverage and advantage the other services and their fire provides yours, rather than trying to create your own. And this is something in a budget constrained military we will always face. So this is a reality check I think our military needs to do. This happens very interestingly. It happened after Gulf War as well. The US Army, there was a severe pushback because the US Air Force and the image created was the war was won by the Air Force and we don't need boots on ground. There were airpower theorists who mentioned that as well. But yeah. I personally don't believe that. And most of us don't believe. We are very clear. The Air Force has a very important finite role, but it cannot do certain things what like the Army can't do, what the Navy can't do. Even the Air Force has its limits, the things which it can't do. So if you recognize these limits and build a force structure around it, is the way ahead, not by trying to, suddenly feel irrelevant. Oh, they have this, so we must have that.
वो war में ये हो गया तो ये बंद कर दो.
हमें भी ये चाहिए, ये लाओ. If you notice, and I'm saying this, I want to make it a point to say this. I don't know if you realized, if you keep your ear to the screens and you will see, there are so many air power specialists today. I've got more air power specialists from the other services who are busy trying to sit on judgment on the IAF's doctrine, the way air power is used, and I don't hear a word of how the other services, how the surface war is going to be in the Indian context or in the maritime war or maritime conflict in the Indian context. I don't see discussions on that. So I think we have to remove this obsession.
Air Force के units कम है ना sir, तो जहाज कम है तो सब एक question उसके बाद.
I think this Air Force, what should I say? I won't say, trying to run down the Air Force or air power, I think it's reached its logical conclusion. The world over, people are clear what it can do. It is time for us, our military, to realize that, be mature enough, and everyone to come on board. No service is indispensable by itself or can win a
Absolutely.
war by itself.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. And that, by the way, is clearly evident in Iran. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
we were, our doctrine, air doctrine was superb that we were able to break the backs of the Pakistanis, but they're not defeated.
No,
They're
absolutely.
not
See,
really defeated.
yeah, and that's becoming an increasing challenge. How do you define victory? How do you define
Yes.
who won, who lost? If a person who, if a nation refuses to lose, you can keep saying what it wants.
So that's what I wanted to bring about, sir. And thank you so much for bringing that out. And it's something that has been bothering me because these I'm no expert of anything, sir. Let me make that very clear. I'm just a guy who observes a lot of things, listens to a lot of people, reads a lot, and realizes that there's no one solution to any problem. Um, I don't know military tactics from M to T, and I don't claim to be an expert on that. But the very little 1% knowledge that I have, it just tells me we need a holistic approach rather than saying that we don't need aircraft carrier, we should get submarines. We don't need aircraft, we need to get this thing. We don't need expensive this thing, we should get this. It has to be a healthy mix of both because our challenges are unique, our challenges are different, and our challenges stem from the geography that we sit in. Uh, as much as an air element is required, you flip the Indian map and you realize, shit, we also need a huge navy. So,
Absolutely.
and we need an air
No, no,
power in the navy itself to kind of handle our area.
yeah. If I may just make a quick point here, what you said, uh, you couldn't be more, spot on, Adi, because especially now, there's one more factor which I would like to bring in here. See, the Indian military is it's on the verge of a huge transformational change,
Yeah.
with this theaterization, whatever be the model it comes. See, the theaterization has come, whatever be the reason, I mean, whatever the perspective and whatever it be, but the fact is that is the future. But it is a huge transformation. And the danger is that in this process of transformation, if we go to conflict, how do we fight? Do we fight on old premises or do we fight on a structure which is not yet to establish itself? We have to come together on our doctrines. We have to come together our operational concepts, our war fighting ethos. We have to work on our a joint operational art. We have got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make here is we would have done better. To simply put, I think this what we are seeing is a sudden surge of again service centric outlook and preservation of domains. Okay, you can't play it in a manner to suit only one service. You have to look, because each service has a role in the larger picture of national security, not just only in joint warfare. So there's a very important point here. So when we come together, when all these thoughts and futures of tomorrow, there needs to be a greater understanding of air power and what it does. Because two facts are clear and what is evident, that air power will be an important player in future conflicts. You can't wish it away. B, for other services, you don't necessarily need to have the assets of another service under your control, as long as you have unfettered access to their use to produce joint military outcomes in the larger interest of the nation. I think if we just bear this in mind, we will be much better served in the long term. And on one word, I'd like to put on the fact that today, unlike any other conflict in the world over, we face two militaries with large air forces, capable air forces, unlike any other adversarial threat. So we have a highly contested war-fighting domain, especially in the air. You cannot wish it away. So our context is entirely unique. I think I'm sure and I'm confident that in the long run, we will find our unique India-centric solutions
Yep,
in the future.
that's the most important thing, sir. Thank you for bringing that out. Thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure connecting with you, and I'm sure this is not going to be. We have a long way to go in learning, so I'm sure that I'm going to disturb you a lot more.
Happily.
Thank you so much. Always to the audience, please share your thoughts, show your comments, your what you guys think, because I'm for a more holistic solution rather than removing one for the other. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Look at the history, and it'll especially as I gave an example in the middle of the bomber versus the missile program of the 1950s, 60s, 70s. That's one of the my most favorite periods of history, especially the aviation development in that cycle. So when you see that and look at the battle of the gun in the air force itself, whether the fighter aircraft should have a gun or not, you will realize that you always need a more holistic solutions. And even the fifth gen fighters today have a freaking gun, and there's a reason for it. So it's always everything has to go along together. And
Simply put, I think, Aadi, I'll just sum it up with one line.
Sir,
what you just said, I just like to I just want to can't resist but putting in one line. When you go into battle or go into war, just remember every military serviceman would like to go in with everything possible in its inventory.
That's how it is.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So like, subscribe, and of course, if you can contribute towards the channel, check out the description, join our groups, and we shall see you back with more discussions like this. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Aadi, and thank you to your listeners.